The winter had lasted 3 years. 3 years of endless snow, of ice that never melted, of a cold so deep it had killed the forest and frozen the rivers solid. 3 years since the sun had truly shone. In the Frost Peak Mountains, where the Winterclaw Pack had ruled for 1,000 generations, wolves were dying. Not from battle, not from disease, from the cold itself, and in a small cave at the base of the mountain, far from the great stone fortress where the Alpha King and his court huddled against the unnatural winter, a young Omega named Allara was also dying. She sat curled against the cave wall, her thin body wrapped in a threadbare cloak that did nothing against the cold. Her silver hair, mark of her Omega blood, hung lank and dirty around her gaunt face. Her ribs showed clearly beneath her skin, what she hadn't eaten in 4 days. 5, maybe. Time blurred when you were starving, but even dying, even frozen and hollow with hunger, Allara's mind was sharp. Because she knew things others had forgotten. Her grandmother had taught her, before the old woman died. Before Allara's pack had cast her out for being useless. An Omega with no mate, no family, no value. The old ways are dying, little one, her grandmother had whispered on her deathbed. But you must remember, when winter comes, that will not end. When the pack grows weak and the Alpha's blood runs cold, only the old ways can save them. At the time, Allara hadn't understood. Now, 3 years into an impossible winter, she understood perfectly. This wasn't natural cold. This was a curse. And she knew how to break it. If only she had the strength left to try. And Allara's eyes drifted to the small leather pouch hanging from her belt, the only thing of value she still possessed. Inside were dried herbs her grandmother had given her years ago. Precious, rare, impossible to find now that the eternal winter had killed every living plant. Frost whisper root, sunwarmer leaves, starfire petals. Herbs that grew only in the deepest cold, that held warmth within them like captured sunlight. Herbs that could, if brewed correctly and paired with the right chance, break even the strongest curse. But what good were herbs when she had no fire to brew them? No strength to perform the ritual? No pack to save? Allara closed her eyes, letting exhaustion pull at her. Maybe it was better this way. Maybe dying alone in a cave was kinder than watching the whole world freeze. She was drifting into sleep. Or death, she couldn't tell which. When she heard it. Voices. Distant. Coming closer. Search every cave. The Alpha King's orders. We won't find anything. Nothing survives out here anymore. Keep looking anyway. He's desperate. Allara's eyes snapped open. The Alpha King. She knew of him, of course. Everyone did. Theren Winterclaw, last of the ancient bloodline, ruler of the Frost Peak Pack. They said he was dying, that the curse was killing him fastest of all, turning his blood to ice in his veins. They said the pack would fall within weeks if something didn't change. Allara pushed herself to her feet, swaying with weakness. This was it. This was the moment her grandmother had prepared her for. She could hide, let the searchers pass, die quietly in her cave, or she could step into the light and offer what she knew, even if they rejected her, even if they laughed at the starving Omega who thought she could save an Alpha King. Allara's grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. The smallest wolf carries the warmth needed to break an eternal winter. She took a shaking breath, then walked to the cave entrance. 3 wolves in human form stood in the snow, guards by their bearing. Warriors. Their faces were drawn, hollow with the same hunger Allara felt. The curse was killing them all. "Wait!" Allara called, her voice hoarse from disuse. The guards spun, weapons half drawn. "Who's there?" Allara stepped into the pale gray light, and all 3 guards froze. She knew what they saw. A skeleton wrapped in rags, silver hair marking her as Omega, eyes too large in a starving face. "Not worthless." That's what their expressions said. "Please," Allara said. "I can help. I know what's wrong with your Alpha. With your pack." The lead guard, older, scarred, barked a harsh laugh. "You? You can barely stand." "I know this isn't natural winter," Allara pressed on, forcing strength into her voice. "It's a curse, blood curse, woven into the Alpha line itself. It's killing your king from the inside out." The laughter died. The guards exchanged glances. "How do you know that?" the scarred one demanded. "My grandmother taught me the old ways, the forgotten knowledge." Alara's hand went to her herb pouch. "I know how to break it." "The old ways are dead," another guard scoffed. "Useless superstition." "Then why is your Alpha dying?" Allara shot back. "Why has winter lasted 3 years? Why do your healers fail?" Silence. The scarred guard studied her for a long moment. Then, "What's your name, Omega?" "Allara." "Well, Allara, you're either mad or a miracle." He gestured to the others. "Bring her. The Alpha will decide." The Winterclaw fortress was carved from the mountain itself, a sprawling palace of stone and ice that had stood for 1,000 years. Now it was a tomb. Allara saw it as they climbed the mountain path. The great halls were dark, their once bright torches reduced to dim flickers. The courtyards that should have echoed with training warriors and playing cubs stood empty, filled only with drifts of snow that never melted. Wolves huddled in corners, wrapped in every fur and blanket they possessed, shivering despite it all. She saw cubs with hollow eyes, their ribs showing through their fur. She saw warriors too weak to lift their weapons. She saw elders who'd survived centuries brought low by 3 years of unnatural cold. Dying. The whole pack was dying. And judging by the desperate, hungry looks some of them gave her as she passed, a starving Omega, easy prey, some were already considering darker solutions to their starvation. The guards flanking her noticed too. They moved closer, protective, despite having just met her. "Eyes down," the scarred one muttered to the wolves they passed. "She's under the Alpha's consideration." It wasn't much protection, but it was something. The guards brought her to the throne room, a massive chamber with walls of white stone veined with silver, and a ceiling that arched high overhead like a cathedral. Ancient tapestries hung from the walls, depicting the Winterclaw Pack's 1,000-year history. But even they looked faded now, covered in a thin layer of frost. At the far end, on a throne carved from a single massive block of ice that never melted even in summer before the curse, sat the Alpha King. Alara's breath caught. Even dying, even covered in a thin sheen of frost that made him look like a statue carved from ice, Theren Winterclaw was magnificent. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall even seated, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of his failing pack. His hair was black as a raven's wing, shot through with silver that marked him as ancient bloodline, and it hung loose past his shoulders, some sections frosted with actual ice. His face was all hard angles and sharp edges, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, or a frozen waterfall. His lips had a blue tint. His fingernails were white. Frost clung to his eyelashes, but it was his eyes that struck her hardest. Ice blue, pale as frozen water. They should have been beautiful. Instead, they looked dead. Empty. Like the light behind them was slowly going out. And in them, she saw death approaching on silent feet. Around the throne, his court stood in loose groups. She recognized the types from her own pack, before they'd cast her out. The beta with gray hair and worried eyes. The healers in their ceremonial robes, looking exhausted and defeated. The high-ranking warriors who stood guard despite being half-starved themselves. And the nobles who whispered behind their hands, already maneuvering for position in case their Alpha died. All of them looked at her with the same expression. Doubt mixed with desperate, yet dying hope. "Who is this?" Theren's voice was deep, rough, edged with pain he was fighting to hide. "An Omega, Alpha," the scarred guard said. "She claims to know what afflicts you. Claims she can help." Theren's gaze fell on Allara, and she felt the weight of it like a physical thing. For a long moment he just stared, taking in her starving frame, her Omega silver hair, her threadbare clothes. Then he laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "An Omega, of course. Send me an Omega when I'm dying. Why not?" He waved a dismissive hand. "Send her away. I don't have time for this." "Please." Allara stepped forward despite her fear, despite her weakness. "I know what's wrong with you. This winter, it's not natural. It's a blood curse, woven into your family line generations ago. It's turning you to ice from the inside." Theren's expression went very still. "How do you know that?" "Because my grandmother taught me to recognize the signs. The way your fingers have gone numb, the way your heartbeat has slowed, the way you can't feel warmth anymore, no matter how close you get to the fire." She watched his face and saw the truth of her words strike home. The healers don't know what it is because they've forgotten the old ways. But I haven't, and I know how to break it. "You?" Theren's lip curled. "A starving Omega knows what my healers, trained for decades, cannot?" "Yes. Why should I believe you?" Allara met his ice-blue eyes steadily. "Because you're dying, and you have nothing left to lose. Because your pack is dying. Because winter will never end until the curse is broken." She pulled the herb pouch from her belt and held it up. "I have what's needed. Frost-resistant herbs grown before this winter began. Paired with the ancestral chants brewed at the right moon phase, they can break even a blood curse." Theren stared at the small leather pouch like it was a weapon. "And why would you help me? What do you want in return?" Alara's answer was simple. "I want to live, and I can't do that if winter never ends." Truth, plain and unadorned. Theren studied her face for a long time. She watched him weighing his options, measuring her worth against his pride. Finally, he spoke. "If you fail, you die. Understood?" "If I fail, we all die," Allara replied. "The curse won't stop with you. It'll consume the whole pack, then spread beyond. Eventually, the entire north will be frozen wasteland." Theren's jaw clenched. He looked at his beta, a gray-haired wolf standing beside the throne. "Marcus?" The beta's expression was grim. "The healers give you 3 days, maybe 4. We have nothing to lose." Theren closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they'd hardened with decision. "Fine. You have until the next full moon. 3 days." He pointed at Allara. "If you can break this curse, name your price. Anything in my power to give." "And if she can't?" someone called from the gathered court. "Then we'll all freeze together," Theren said flatly. He stood, a clear effort, though he tried to hide it, and gestured to a servant. "Give her whatever she needs, a room, food, access to the kitchens." His gaze found Alara's again. "Save us, Omega, and or die trying." They gave her a small room in the servants' quarters, simple but warmer than her cave. A real bed with actual blankets, a table and chair, a window that looked out over the frozen forest. It felt like luxury, and they fed her. Not much. Food was still scarce throughout the pack, but enough. Warm broth thick with vegetables. Bread that was only slightly stale. Even a piece of dried meat. Allara ate slowly, forcing herself not to devour it all at once. Her starving body wanted to gorge, but she knew that would only make her sick. She needed to be strong for what was coming. She needed steady hands and a clear head. After eating, she sat at the small table in her room and carefully laid out her herbs. This was sacred work. Her grandmother had taught her to treat every herb with reverence, so to thank each plant for the gift of its medicine. "Plants remember," her grandmother had said. They remember the songs we sing them, the respect we show them. Treat them well, and they'll lend you their power when you need it most. Allara ran her fingers over each herb, feeling their textures, breathing in their scents, reconnecting with knowledge she'd kept alive through 3 years of starvation and loneliness. Frost whisper root, silver white and twisted like a tiny frozen tree. It smelled of mint and winter mornings, and something else, something that reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen. This would form the base of the brew, the foundation. It grew only in the deepest cold, drawing strength from ice itself. Perfect for combating a curse born of supernatural winter. Sun-warmer leaves, golden even dried, holding the memory of summer heat in their papery surface. If she held them to the light just right, they seemed to glow from within. These would provide the warmth needed to counter the ice, the fire to melt frozen blood. Her grandmother had told her stories of these leaves saving wolves from frostbite so severe they should have lost their limbs. The leaves had brought warmth back to dead flesh, restored feeling to numb extremities. Starfire petals, deep blue with silver edges that seemed to shift and shimmer in the candlelight, rare as dragon's teeth and twice as precious. These would bind the magic together, would channel the power of the full moon and the ancient words into something that could break even a blood curse. Each petal was worth a fortune. Her grandmother had given her 7 of them with trembling hands on her deathbed, making Allara swear to use them only when the need was desperate. When winter comes, that will not end. When the pack grows weak and the Alpha's blood runs cold, that's when you'll need these, little one. That's when the smallest wolf will have to be the strongest. Ilara's throat tightened at the memory. Her grandmother had known. Somehow she'd known this day would come. But herbs alone weren't enough. Never enough. She needed the chance. The old words her grandmother had taught her, passed down through generations of Omegas who'd served as healers, and wise women before the packs forgot their value, before strength became measured only in teeth and claws and dominance. But herbs alone weren't enough. She needed the chance. The old words her grandmother had taught her were passed down through generations of Omegas who'd served as healers, and wise women before the packs forgot their value. Allara closed her eyes and let the words surface from memory. Ice that binds and winter's breath, blood that chills and beckons death, by root and leaf and starfire's glow, I call the warmth from long ago. Ancestors' wisdom, hear my plea, break the curse and set them free from frozen veins and hearts of stone. Restore the warmth they've never known. The words felt right, ancient, powerful, but they needed to be woven into the brewing at exactly the right moments, under the full moon's light, while the Alpha King drank the mixture. And there was risk. The curse was tied to his bloodline. Breaking it would require touching that blood magic directly, channeling it through herself as a conduit. If she wasn't strong enough, it would kill her. If she made even one mistake in the chant or the brewing, it would kill them both. Allara looked at her trembling hands and forced them still. She could do this. She had to do this. For the pack. For the world. For herself. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Enter," she called. The door opened, and Theren Winterclaw stepped inside. Allara shot to her feet, startled. The Alpha King didn't visit servants' quarters. "Alpha, sit," Theren said, his voice rough. "I'm not here as your king. I'm here as someone who needs to understand what you're about to do." Slowly, Allara sat. Theren took the other chair, his large frame seeming too big for the small room. This close, she could see the signs of the curse clearly, the blue tint to his lips, the way frost seemed to cling to his skin, the exhaustion in his eyes. "Tell me," Theren said, "truly, can you break this curse, or are you giving us false hope?" Allara met his gaze. "I can break it. But there's risk. The curse is tied to your blood. To break it, I'll need to channel the magic through myself. If I'm not strong enough," she paused, "it could kill me. And if it does, the backlash might kill you too." Theren was quiet for a long moment. "And you're willing to take that risk? For a pack that isn't yours? For an alpha you don't know?" "I'm willing to take that risk to end this winter," Allara said simply. "I'm tired of being cold. Tired of starving. Tired of watching the world die." "You're braver than you look, Omega." "I'm more desperate than I look," Allara corrected. Theron's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. It's but close. "Why did your pack cast you out?" The question caught her off guard. "How did you have no scent of pack on you. You were alone in that cave. And you're Omega. They're never alone by choice." Alara's throat tightened. "They said I was useless. No mate, no children, no value. Just another mouth to feed." She looked away. They were probably right. They were fools. She looked back at him, startled. Theron's ice-blue eyes held hers. "You know things they've forgotten. You can do what they cannot. That's not useless. That's invaluable." Something warm unfurled in Alara's chest. Something she'd thought long dead. Hope. "If I save you," she said quietly. "If I break this curse and your pack survives, I want sanctuary. A place here. I don't want to go back to dying alone in a cave." "If you save us," Theren replied, "you can name anything you want. Anything." Their eyes held for a long moment. Then Theren stood, wincing slightly at the movement. "The full moon rises tomorrow night. Will you be ready?" "Yes." He nodded once and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Allara?" "Yes?" "Thank you for trying." Then he was gone, leaving Allara alone with her herbs and her racing heart. The night of the full moon. They gathered in the great courtyard as the sun set. What little sun penetrated the endless gray clouds that had choked the sky for 3 years. The whole pack had come to watch. Hundreds of wolves, some in human form, some in wolf form, all hollow-eyed and shivering, desperate for anything that might break the curse, killing them all. They formed a wide circle around the ritual space, giving Allara room to work but pressing close enough to see. She felt their eyes on her like physical weight. Their hope, their doubt, their desperation. If she failed, she wouldn't just die. She'd take their last hope with her. Allara stood at the center of the courtyard, where a small fire had been built in a bronze brazier. Beside her, a bronze cauldron hung over the flames on an iron tripod. Ancient tools used for rituals exactly like this centuries ago, before the packs forgot the old ways. Her hands shook as she added wood to the fire, coaxing the flames higher, but not from cold this time. From fear. This was it. Everything her grandmother had taught her, see everything she'd preserved in her memory while others forgot. It all came down to this moment. Theren approached through the crowd, which parted before him like water. He was flanked by his Beta Marcus and several high-ranking wolves, but even surrounded, he looked alone, isolated by his impending death. He'd dressed in ceremonial robes for the occasion, white fur trimmed with silver thread, ancient and beautiful, the same robes every Alpha King had worn for 1,000 years during important rituals. They hung slightly loose on his frame now. Even in just 3 days, the curse had taken more of him. He looked like a king from the old stories, like the legends her grandmother used to tell. Their eyes met across the ritual space, and Allara saw the question there. "Are you sure? Really sure?" She nodded, on forcing confidence she didn't quite feel. Theren took his place beside the cauldron, standing so close she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin like he was carved from ice instead of flesh. The moon began to rise over the mountain peaks, full and bright, casting silver light over the snow-covered courtyard. Its light seemed to make the frost glow, transforming the dying pack into something beautiful and terrible. It was time. Allara pulled out her herbs with trembling fingers. The small leather pouch felt impossibly light for something that held all their hopes. First, the frost whisper root. She crumbled the silver-white root between her fingers, releasing its scent. Mint and winter and something else. Something that smelled like the ghost of snow. She let the pieces fall into the water, whispering the first line of the chant. Ice that binds, and winter's breath. The water in the cauldron reacted immediately, turning pale blue and beginning to steam despite the freezing air. The steam rose in spirals, catching the moonlight. Around the courtyard, wolves gasped. Some stepped back. Magic like this hadn't been seen in generations. Next, the sun-warmer leaves. She scattered them across the surface one by one, watching them float and spin, their golden color stark against the blue water. She continued the chant, her voice growing stronger. Blood that chills and beckons death. Golden light spread through the water like veins of fire, swirling and mixing with the blue. The two colors danced together, intertwining, beginning to create something new. The temperature around the ritual space changed, so wolves who'd been shivering felt warmth touch their faces for the first time in 3 years. Some began to weep. Finally, the starfire petals. These she handled with extra care, each petal deep blue with silver edges, rare as dragon's teeth, precious beyond measure. Her grandmother had given her exactly 7, 1 for each major celestial body in the old ways. She dropped them one by one into the glowing mixture, her voice ringing clear across the courtyard now. By root and leaf and starfire's glow, I call the warmth from long ago. The 7th petal touched the water's surface. The cauldron erupted in light, blue and gold and silver all at once, bright as captured moonlight, bright as bottled stars. The glow was so intense that wolves shielded their eyes, unable to look directly at it. But Allara didn't look away. She watched the magic swirl and build, watched centuries of forgotten knowledge become power, become hope, become salvation. It was working. The old ways weren't dead. They'd just been sleeping, waiting for someone to remember. Allara reached for a bronze cup and dipped it into the glowing mixture. Her hands steadied as ancient power flowed through her grandmother's knowledge, generations of forgotten wisdom. She held the cup out to Theren. Drink, she said, all of it. And whatever happens, don't fight the magic. Theren took the cup. Their fingers brushed, and Allara felt a jolt run through her. Not magic. Something else. Something primal and terrifying and right. She pushed it aside. Focus. Theren raised the cup to his lips and drank. The effect was immediate. He gasped, body going rigid. The cup fell from his hands, clattering on the stone. Frost erupted from his skin. Not just a coating, but thick ice that spread across his chest, up his neck, over his face. The curse was fighting back. No! Someone shouted. It's killing him! Stand back! Allara commanded, her voice ringing with authority she didn't know she possessed. She placed both hands on Theren's chest, directly over his heart, and began the second half of the chant. Ancestors' wisdom, hear my plea, break the curse and set them free. Power surged through her, vast, ancient, terrifying. The curse was alive, a malevolent thing woven into Theren's very blood. It fought her. Ice raced up her arms, burning cold. Pain exploded through her body. But Allara held on, pouring every ounce of strength into the magic, into the words, from frozen veins and hearts of stone, restore the warmth they've never known. The world went white. Power exploded outward from where Allara's hands touched Theren's chest. A wave of golden light that swept across the courtyard, across the fortress, across the entire mountain. Allara felt the curse break. felt it shatter like ice under a hammer. And then the backlash hit. She screamed as magic tore through her, trying to find somewhere to go, something to burn. She was dying. The power was too much. She couldn't. Strong arms caught her as her legs gave out. Theren. He held her against his chest. His warm chest, she realized with shock. The ice was gone. His skin was warm for the first time in years. Allara! Allara, stay with me! She tried to speak, but darkness was pulling at her. The last thing she saw was Theren's face above hers. His ice-blue eyes now warm with life, and something else. Something that looked like fear. For her. Then the darkness took her. 7 days later, Allara woke to warmth. Real warmth. Sunlight streaming through a window. Sunlight. She sat up with a gasp, looking around wildly. She was in a large room, not the servants' quarters. This was a bedchamber fit for nobility, with carved wooden furniture, and thick furs on the bed, and tapestries on the walls. And through the window, she saw blue sky. Blue. Not gray. Not white. Blue. The door burst open and Theren strode in, moving faster than she'd ever seen him move. You're awake. Relief washed over his face. Thank the gods, you're awake. How long? 7 days. You've been unconscious for 7 days. Theren crossed to the bed, sitting on the edge. The healers weren't sure you'd wake at all. The amount of magic you channeled. He stopped, jaw clenching. You could have died. Did it work? Allara asked. The curse. Broken. Theren held up his hand, turning it in the light. Completely broken. I'm warm for the first time in 3 years. We all are. He gestured to the window. Spring came 3 days ago. The snow melted in hours. Plants are already growing. The rivers are flowing again. Tears sprang to Alara's eyes. It worked. It actually worked. Because of you. Theren's voice was rough with emotion. You saved us all, Allara. The pack, the mountain, the north itself. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his warm hand. You said you wanted sanctuary. A place here. Yes, Allara whispered. What if I offered you more than that? Her breath caught. What? Theren's ice-blue eyes, warm now, alive, held hers with an intensity that made her heart race. When you placed your hands on my chest, when you channeled that magic, I felt it. The bond. Mate bond. Alara's eyes went wide. That's not... I know you didn't plan it. Neither did I. But it's there. Undeniable. His thumb stroked her cheek. You're my mate, Allara. My true mate. The one my soul has been searching for. I'm just an Omega, she whispered. You're the Omega who saved my entire pack with knowledge everyone else had forgotten. You're the Omega who risked her life to break a curse that's plagued my family for generations. You're the Omega who brought spring back to the north. He leaned closer, forehead resting against hers. You're not just anything. You're extraordinary. And if you'll have me, I want you as my mate, my Luna, my queen. Alara's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. You don't have to decide now, Theren added quickly. I know this is sudden. I know we barely know each other. But, yes. He pulled back, eyes wide. Yes? Allara smiled, a real smile, the first in years. Yes, I'll be your mate, your Luna. She touched his face, marveling at the warmth of his skin. You said the bond was there. I felt it too. When I was channeling the magic, I felt connected to you, like our souls were touching. Theren closed his eyes, relief washing over his face. Thank the gods. Then he kissed her, gentle at first, something deeper, his warm hand cradling her face like she was something precious. When they finally parted, both breathless, Theren rested his forehead against hers again. My pack laughed when I brought you in. a starving Omega who thought she could save us all. He smiled. You proved them wrong. You proved that the old ways aren't dead. That the smallest wolf can carry the warmth needed to break an eternal winter. My grandmother used to say that, Allara whispered. That the smallest wolf carries the greatest warmth. She was right. Theren pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She was right about everything. Epilogue. 3 months later. The coronation took place on the first day of summer. Allara stood before the assembled pack, no longer starving, no longer dressed in rags. She wore robes of silver and white, her hair braided with winter roses that bloomed year-round now, a gift from the mountain itself. Theren placed the crown on her head, a circlet of white gold set with moonstones that caught the light like captured stars. I present to you, Theren said, his voice carrying across the crowd, Luna Allara Winterclaw, healer, cursebreaker, keeper of the old ways. The pack erupted in cheers. Allara looked out at the hundreds of faces, all healthy now, well-fed, warm. Children played in the courtyard. Flowers grew in window boxes. The fortress that had been a tomb was now truly alive, because she'd remembered what everyone else had forgotten. That night, at the feast, the pack's eldest approached Allara. Luna, the old woman said, bowing, I have a request. Of course. Teach us. The old ways, the herb lore, the ancestral chants. My grandmother knew them once, but that knowledge was lost. Please, help us remember. Allara felt tears sting her eyes. I would be honored. And so it began. Allara established a school of the old ways within the fortress. She taught any wolf who wanted to learn, Omega, Beta, even Alphas, the knowledge her grandmother had passed down. The herbs that healed, the chants that protected, the wisdom that had kept packs alive for millennia before they forgot to value it. She and Theren ruled together, balancing new and old, strength and wisdom, alpha power and omega knowledge. And when winter came again, natural winter this time, beautiful and temporary, the pack was ready. They brewed the frost-resistant herbs. They sang the ancestral songs. They remembered. On the longest night of that first real winter, Allara stood at the window of the royal chambers, one hand resting on her gently swelling belly where their first child grew. Theren came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his warmth chasing away any chill. What are you thinking? He murmured against her hair. That my grandmother was right. Allara leaned back against him. The smallest wolf did carry the warmth needed to break the eternal winter. You were never small, Theren said. You just hadn't been seen yet. Allara turned in his arms and kissed him, tasting summer and spring, and the promise of all the seasons to come. Outside, snow fell gently, beautifully, the way it was meant to. Temporary, not eternal. Life, not death. And in the fortress that had been saved by an Omega's ancient wisdom, what wolves sang the old songs and brewed the old remedies, and remembered finally that strength came in many forms. Sometimes the most powerful magic was simply knowledge, passed from grandmother to granddaughter, kept alive by those the world had forgotten. And sometimes the smallest wolf, the one everyone overlooked, was exactly the one needed to save them all.